Questions, I'd like to introduce the All Aboard Florida people. They've been kind enough to come here and educate us, Rusty and Richard. And if you want to come on up, and I would like to say, if you do have any questions, to keep them after the presentation, and also to keep it organized, to stand up and state your name and ask the question, so we can keep a record of the questions and concerns. Greatly appreciate it. And gentlemen. All right. Good evening. How's everybody?
Very good.
Thank you so much for inviting us to be with you tonight. Actually, I'm really thrilled, kind of really excited to be here because I'm told I'm standing in an old Flagler system railway station. So that's the coolest place I could be right now tonight to talk to you about this system that we're building. And before I begin, I want to introduce my colleague Richard Pinsky from Palm Beach County. He works for All Aboard Florida as one of our consultants and big help to us in this area. I'm from our Orlando area. Companies, I'm waiting for this to turn on. What am I doing? Slowly but surely warming up. I'm from Orlando, but the company's headquartered in Coral Gables. Most of you folks who, I don't know, if you live here in this area, if you don't know much about Henry Flagler, then maybe you haven't lived here very long. But I would say that probably most of you are pretty familiar with Henry Flagler and what he did for this part of the state. And trying to wonder, Richard, why this isn't doing its thing.
You can sit here. I'll sit next to Mary.
The lights out. All right, I think we're in business. Technical difficulties. Do we have a light switch?
Yeah, right.
At least maybe the front light switch.
Yeah, I'm scared of the dark.
Yeah.
It's getting close to Halloween. And this is an old building.
This is an old building. It's ghosts and things like that. So, okay.
There it comes.
Now that I've done that.
Now, oh, it takes out all of them. It just takes out this whole thing.
This is the strangest thing. Hang in there, folks. This one, F1.
F5? Whatever it is.
No, you know, the little thing that says, there we go. Thank you. That little thing won't go away. I don't know why. That thing's down there and it's blocking my slideshow button. Okay, here we go. So, I'm here to talk to you about, again, Henry Flagler's Railroad. Company now we call All Aboard Florida. So, as you know, Henry Flagler started running passenger trains down this corridor in the late 1890s. Took his train all the way to Key West by 1910. Probably one of the most historic feats ever done in the early part of the century was to take his train all the way to Key West. And so that passenger train, of course, that train track was blown down in 1935 by the hurricane in 1935. Passenger rail continued on this corridor right out this door until 1968. and then it quit. As most people know, most passenger rail around the country discontinued. People decided cars were better, airplanes were becoming the favorite mode of travel, and train travel slowly disappeared. Private sector train travel disappeared. Amtrak took over most of the passenger railroads around the country, and today, with few exceptions, Amtrak is the only passenger rail operations going on in the United States today. So what are we doing? Well, we're taking we're taking a bit of a gamble, but we think a good gamble, to restore passenger rail to this corridor. When Henry Flagler started this train, he had some brochures that said, "East coast of Florida is paradise regained, come visit it." And he would lure northerners to come down, and as you know, he built hotels along the way as he came south, and he helped build this entire side of the state. Another guy named Henry Plant on the other coast built the west coast, built Tampa, but Henry Flagler was the one of the few people in this state who were really responsible for a huge amount of growth all the way from St. Augustine down to Miami. And I'm proud to be associated with this company. So what is this company? Well, it's Florida East Coast Industries, and we are the successor company to Henry Flagler's Florida East Coast Railroad. We've grown a bit since then. We have 4 companies under our umbrella. A real estate development company called Flagler. It's been one of the largest in the state. We have a logistics company that owns about 400 acres near Miami Airport that's connected to the Port of Miami, which is connected by our rail. We have a company called Parallel Infrastructure. They monetize railroad right-of-way. And then we have All Aboard Froelich, was created in March of 2012. And this company was born out of a meeting that our owners had when they were talking about a high-speed rail system. And if you folks have lived here for a long time, you know that we haven't talked about high-speed rail in Florida for a number of years. Mostly they were talking about it from Orlando to Miami, following maybe the course of the turnpike. Never really have talked about putting passenger rail back on this track. When a plan to put a high-speed rail system from Tampa to Orlando failed a few years ago, this company said, well, wait just a minute. Maybe we can put passenger rail back on our tracks. Maybe we can make a good business case to do that and survive. And that's what we decided to do. We decided to do it a little bit differently than it was originally built, from Jacksonville to Miami. We are connecting 2 of the biggest cities in Florida, Miami and Orlando. And we are going to do it with all private funds. So I just want to make sure folks know that we are the only privately funded passenger rail operation being developed right now in the United States. We are not asking taxpayers for any operating subsidies. We are not asking taxpayers for any capital expense grants or subsidies. We're putting up our own capital to build this railroad and restore passenger traffic to this train. And where are we going to go? As I said, we're going to go from Miami to Orlando. You know, Florida is about to be the third largest state. We've been the 4th. 19 million people. A huge number of those people live on this coast, as you know. And West Palm to Miami, of course, is a huge population base. And Orlando is a big city now, that whole area. And Orlando, you may not know, is the most visited city in the world in terms of tourism. They have 55 million people go visit Orlando every year. Many of those people go by car, many go by airplane, some go by Amtrak. And in Miami Airport gets 39 million people flying through that airport every year. Most of those visitors from Latin America. Most of the visitors that come to Orlando are from the United States or Canada. It's about 75% of the Orlando visitors are domestic. About 75% of visitors to Miami are domestic. So this company said, well, wait a minute, these 2 city pairs appear to be worth looking at. We have a great synergy of tourism going between these cities and this coast and Orlando, and of course business opportunities. We don't make a decision to spend $1.5 billion, and that's the investment this company is making, $1.5 billion to restore passenger service to this line. You don't make that decision lightly. We have to do a study and decide if this is going to be a good business proposition. We found in our study, and we did what we call an investment grade ridership study, we found about 50 million people travel between Miami, Fort Lauderdale, West Palm, and Orlando every year. That's a lot of people. That's business travelers, that's leisure travelers, folks who come in, fly into Miami, want to spend some time on the beach, or they fly into Fort Lauderdale, West Palm, or even along this coast, spend some time, and then they want to go to Disney for a few days, or Universal, or SeaWorld, wherever they go. So A lot of folks don't do that because they may be from a foreign land and they don't want to rent a car here, they don't know where they're going, they're uncomfortable, but they will get on the train to go to Orlando, and vice versa. Folks who visit Orlando want to go to the beaches will go to Miami or the rest of South Florida or even the Treasure Coast. We're going to do this a little bit differently than Henry Flagler did it. We're going to make this trip in about 3 hours between Miami and Orlando, a little under 3 hours. We're going to use normal. That's a nice sound. Okay, so we're gonna use something more advanced than what's going by right now. We're going to use advanced diesel technology with brand new locomotives, brand new passenger cars, and we're going to use about 10 train sets that we're going to purchase that are being built and will be going up and down these tracks. I mentioned the $1.5 billion. A lot of money, but relatively speaking, compared to other projects that are being discussed around the country, that's fairly inexpensive. In California, they're trying to build a high-speed rail system. I forget how many billions of dollars it is, but it's quite phenomenal. And one reason why it's so expensive there or in other places, they've been talking about a train between Las Vegas and Los Angeles for a number of years. Billions of dollars, very expensive, but they have to buy the land to get there. We don't have to buy the land. We own the corridor already. And so that's why we're using this corridor to get to Orlando. And when we go to Orlando, we're not buying land, but we're leasing land from the state of Florida and the Expressway Authority. I talked about who's going to ride this train, and this is kind of a pie chart of we think is going to be riding this train based on the study that we did. And we found about 75% of the people will be tourists. And about 26 to 30% will be business travelers. And I think that number will go up. We have a lot of business travel now from Central Florida to South Florida. It's growing, and we think that people, people want to work. How many people have their iPhones with them, or their Blackberries, or how many people have iPads? And when you travel, a lot of people want to continue to be connected. And if you're driving, you should not be. So we think that this will be an incentive to get people on our train because they can work, especially business people, and leisure people can look at their iPad and watch movies and do whatever they want to do, and not worry about being a dangerous driver, which is becoming an increasingly difficult situation on our roads. I mentioned 3-hour travel between the two cities. We're going to be running hourly service, so our first train will leave at 6 a.m. from Miami and 6 a.m. from Orlando. And they will take, as I said, just under 3 hours to get to either place. We're only making the 2 stops, West Palm Beach and Fort Lauderdale. Why are we doing that? Well, again, to make this a successful business proposition, we have to look for where most of the ridership is, and most of the ridership is coming from those cities. Those are the optimal cities that we studied, where people are going to most people will get on and off, and they will take our train. Some people may get on a West Palm and go to Miami or just Orlando. We don't. It's going to be a lot of cross traffic, we think, along the system. They'll be traveling faster than that freight train that just went by. From Miami to West Palm Beach, we'll go no faster than 79 miles per hour. From West Palm Beach north through this area, we'll go no faster than 110 miles per hour. And that's not a steady speed. You have to slow down for various reasons. But there will be some stretches where it can go that fast. Obviously, Stewart's, you're not going to do that. As we get through there, especially going across the bridge and around that bend, you have to do. When we get to Cocoa, and we call that the Cocoa Curve, you saw that map, we turn left to go to Orlando. We're going to be picking up speeds there to 125 miles per hour right into Orlando. And that is because we're not crossing any roads there. We're going across mostly ranch land, undeveloped land, right along the B-line corridor, the beach line corridor that we're leasing from the state and from the Expressway Authority. So that's about a 35-mile trip, and that'll take, about 7 or 8 minutes to get there. A lot different than the freight trains that go by. These trains are faster, they're lighter, they're shorter. Most freight trains, especially if you're sitting in a crossing when a freight train's going by, you're going to be there several minutes. These are much shorter trains, about 900 feet compared to a freight train, which is about 7,800 feet long, and we'll be traveling faster than the freight trains. Right now, you have about 18 trains going by every day here, and we will be adding an additional 32 trains, but they'll be much shorter and go by more quickly. Why so many trains? Well, I said 6 a.m. departure, and we're going to be running till 9 p.m. at night, so every hour departures, and so that makes about 16 trips a day each direction. Another thing that's going to be interesting about this train is not going to be just a passenger service. Folks who've ridden Amtrak know it's a nice train, so a lot of the equipment's old, but it's very comfortable. I like it. I've been on the Acela too, which is their Amtrak's version of a high-speed rail that goes between Washington and New York, and that's a nice train too. So we want to make this just a little bit better than Amtrak, maybe a lot better, because we're creating what we think will be a travel and leisure and entertainment experience. The top management that we hire to operate and develop this train are both from Disney, and so they know how to bring hospitality product that the people, that the consumer wants. Our president of our company for operations opened up Disney Hong Kong and Tokyo. He ran all the Disney hotels in Orlando. We have two co-presidents, and the other one helped build the Disney hotels, and he's developing our stations in Miami and West Palm and in Fort Lauderdale. So we're going to make it an entertainment experience, and we're going to have types of cars where it caters to the different types of traveler. Whether you're a leisure traveler, you have a family, you'll have a car that you can be in, but business travelers may want to be in another car, maybe something more quiet where they can work. So we're going to offer different kinds of services to our riders. And another hallmark of success to this train will be the fact that it's going through the center of the cities that we're serving. All these towns, including here, were built around Henry Flagler's railroad. And so we're in an excellent location to serve the people, because that's where the population base is, as opposed to previous iterations of high-speed rail systems that have been discussed over the decades in Florida. Our station locations are very strategic, and one of the most exciting locations if you're a train buff is in Miami, because that red area there in Miami is the location where Henry Flagler's station was that he built in 1895. That was his land, that was his station location, just to the bottom part of the red area. That's about 9 acres that has always been in the company hands. We still own it. We've always owned it for the past several decades, since 1968, when passenger service was discontinued. That's been parking lots, and it's people who want to go to the government center in downtown Miami or the courthouse. That's where they park. So we're going to take that and we're going to redevelop that area to build our train station. And what's interesting, if you see the light blue line there to the left, that's Metro Rail. That's the Metro Rail system that serves Miami. It goes south all the way to the area they call Dadeland, Kendall. And they're using the corridor that was the FEC corridor that went all the way to Key West. We sold it to Miami-Dade County in 1985, and they built the Metro Rail. And then the blue area around downtown is Metro Mover. That's an automated people mover where you get on Metro Rail, you can get the people mover and go downtown. We're going to be what we call intermodal. We're going to be connecting to those systems. So if we're coming from the north on that orange line, and you see that orange line, which is our FEC rail, goes off the screen, that's the port of Miami. And we run the freight from boxcars and goods that come from, not boxcars, containers that come from the port, go on our train and go north. But we'll be, say, if you're coming from the south, and we'll be elevating to about 50 feet platform right next to the Metro Rail. We're going to have a long concourse, kind of like an airport concourse, with a lot of retail. We're going to have street level retail. And you'll be able to get off that train and get on Metro Rail and go to the south. You can go downtown. You can go to the Miami airport. And we're going to build some hotels and residential buildings there, two office towers, one residential tower, and probably a hotel. So we're really excited about that because this area of downtown Miami is rather undeveloped, and so we think we're going to breathe some economic life to this part of Miami. And there's a 3D view of what it might look like in downtown Miami. Those sort of ghostly looking buildings are representations of what our buildings might look like in downtown Miami. And over to the left, there's that little area right there. That is where the old Miami Heat Arena was, and they tore that down and built a new one a few blocks away. And the gentleman who owns that property has announced an 1,800-room hotel there and a 500,000 square feet convention center. So he's announced that since we announced our project. So we're already creating new development opportunities in downtown Miami. And same thing's going to happen in Fort Lauderdale. This is downtown Fort Lauderdale. So Broward Boulevard is right here as you come in from Interstate 95, which is over there. And you see the Broward bus station there. So we will be somewhere in that red circle, obviously along the orange line where our station is going to be. It's going to be smaller than Miami, but we'll be intermodal with the Broward County bus transit system and right between the state office building. And see all this property up here. See, this This is a property that we have acquired for our station, and that's what we're building. Smaller than Miami, maybe 1 million square feet. The office, we'll have an office building, we'll have retail, we'll have a hotel. And we're connecting to, where am I, Fort Lauderdale. So this is called a Wade streetcar, this blue area here. That is that's a streetcar system that Fort Lauderdale is building, a real old-fashioned streetcar with grade level. It's going to be really nice, and we'll connect with that. Intermodal is very important with any transportation system you build now in the United States. It has to be intermodal to be successful. Downtown West Palm Beach, similar situation, similar scope in terms of a type of station we're going to build. Where's Okeechobee, Richard? Right down here? Yep. So here's where you get off the interstate, Okeechobee Boulevard downtown. And this is our station right there, that red area. About the same size as Lauderdale. This is a new performing arts area in West Palm, and a city place, shops and restaurants. And here's the government center, so right in between. Henry Flagler's original station is just off the map. I just found that out because I was reading Seth Ramson's book. He's the historian for the FEC Railway. Just up there. And then he had a rail bridge that went all the way to Palm Beach Island and took people right to the Breakers Hotel. They tore that down. Unfortunately, it was wooden. Pretty cool. I saw some pictures. So we're going to be right downtown. This is more centrally located here to serve the business and the residential areas of West Palm, downtown West Palm Beach. And there are residential. There's condominiums, homes. Right around here is mostly warehouse, so we think we're going to breathe some economic life into this area here too. And this light blue, this is a trolley they're going to build, so it'll be connecting with us. We'll also be connecting to the Tri-Rail commuter rail, which is over there, a couple blocks away. And then when we leave West Palm, we're going to keep going, and we're going to get to here, Cocoa, to what we call the Cocoa Curve, and we'll be turning left and joining the State Road 528 corridor. They call that the beach line. I'm sure you all have been on it, going to Orlando Airport. We have leased part of this beach line up here belongs to Florida DOT. This part belongs to the Orange County Expressway Authority, and we are leasing land from both those entities. Florida DOT, we've signed the lease to access their property, to lay our tracks. We've signed the lease, so we have an agreement with the Expressway Authority to access their property. We'll be operating tracks just to the south of this line, and we're going right into Orlando Airport. Orlando Airport will be the first airport in the United States that has a truly intermodal train station within the airport property. Miami's built something similar. It's outside the airport property, but does connect to Miami Airport. Amtrak goes in there now, as well as the Metro Rail. And that's the way of the future for airports, to be intermodal with other modes of transportation. And Orlando is way ahead of the game for everybody. We're going to come in north. Here's the beach line again right here. And we're going to come to the north and come down. This is the main terminal for Orlando Airport. Come right past that terminal to the south right there, which is now vacant field. And Orlando Airport's building an intermodal train station there that'll handle 4 train operations there. And around that train station, they're going to build 120 new gates for airplanes. That's a 20-year project. The train station will be first, but as traffic grows in Orlando Airport, they'll be building new gates and moving most of their international traffic there, and new garages, 10,000 new parking spaces. A people mover, I said 4 train modes of transportation. So one will be an automated people mover to get people from here to here. One will be Sunrail, which is our commuter rail, which is this line right here, to connect. One will be all aboard Florida, and the other one will be a light rail that goes from Orlando Airport to their convention center in Orlando and the International Drive tourist area. All these will come online, over a period of time. But we hope to have our train running by the end of 2015. By the end of 2015, you will see trains going by that are under testing. So they'll be empty, but we'll be testing and running them back and forth, testing the schedules and that kind of thing. And by early 2016, you'll see actual what we call revenue service. Well, trains will be leaving the stations with people and taking them through. There's a model of the intermodal hub at Orlando Airport. This area here is where the trains come in through here. This will be a walkway from the garage, which is right here. You go across the tracks to the train station. And this area here is a drop-off area where cars and buses and taxis take people in. Pick up and drop off. This eventually will grow. This garage is only 2,500 spaces. There'll be more here, more on this side. Eventually a huge intermodal complex for Orlando Airport that'll take many years to build. So where are we now? I mentioned we're going to start service in late 2015, early 2016. It's pretty fast for most projects, but again, I emphasize that we're a private project, so we don't have to go through some of the same hoops, most of the same hoops that federal government projects or state government or county government, any government project has to go through. So we can move much more quickly in terms of the type of work we do when we're choosing a contractor. If you're a government agency, you have to do a RFP process where you have to ask for bids, and it takes months to do that. We can just interview contractors if we want and say, you're the one, give me your price and we'll take it. And that's what we're doing. So we have a large engineering firm called HNTB that's managing the project for us. We're finalizing our environmental processes. We do have to do an environmental impact statement like most any project because we do have Federal Railroad Administration oversight, as any freight rail does. So we're doing an environmental assessment right here between West Palm and Orlando. Process. We expect to have that completed in the spring of 2014. We already have our permits from Miami to West Palm Beach. We've been permitted. We're actually going to be breaking ground by the end of this year. So there'll be new track going down, station development under construction, and I would say by mid-2014 you'll see construction activity going on most of the corridor. So it's a 235-mile construction project, and we're not going to start building one end and kind of work our way up. We're going to see construction activity all along the corridor at the same time, or close to for probably a good year, from Orlando all the way to Miami. And for this area, I think probably mid to late 2014, you'll see some activity on those tracks out there. Where this train is single tracked, there will be additional. Where this corridor has single tracks, there will be an additional track later. Will be double tracked. When Henry Flagler built his train, it was all double tracked. He had 2 tracks going up and down. Obviously, some area he had sidings and spurs and things for his freight business. But we're going to be re-establishing the double track standard here. We don't have to buy a new corridor to do that. We already own it, and the corridor is wide enough, 100 feet wide. So you might see some track maybe move over a little bit. We don't know if the track around here would go on the west side of the existing track or east side, or whether we're going to move one over to make room. That's yet to be decided. We're going to have teams of engineers going up and down the corridor starting before the year is over, surveying the entire corridor. So you might see people walking around with clipboards in their hands and checking out to see what they have to do, especially at the railroad crossings, because we have a lot of work to do at the railroad crossings to make them safer. So when you're traveling at higher speeds, around here where you see the freight trains go by, you have 2 gates that go down, and where we have to add new track, we have to redesign those crossings, and we have to build them to safety standards that the Federal Railroad Administration requires that would be commensurate with the type of service we're going to put on this track. So we're going to be doing that very soon. And then we're going to announce what we're going to call the train. So the company's called Lauderdale, Florida, but don't know what we're going to call the train yet. So we're going to have a name for it, and that's being studied right now. And then we're about to hopefully sign a contract real soon with the company that's going to build the trains. So we've been interviewing several train manufacturers, and we're down to 2, and we're almost down to 1. But those trains will be built all in the USA. There are 2 factories that we've been looking at, one in New York and one in California. So unfortunately not here, but at least they'll be built in the USA. And is there anything I've forgotten to mention, Richard, on this project? I just want to say that I think that if you look at the history of Florida, you could name on your hand, or one hand probably, people or events that have created major change in the state. One was Henry Flagler. The other one was Walt Disney. Another one was a guy named John Gorey, who's lived in Apalachicola, who invented refrigeration, which got us to air conditioning. And his statue's up in the U.S. Capitol in Washington, D.C., actually, which is pretty interesting. Somebody else mentioned to me, don't forget the guy who invented the mosquito control truck. So I think what we're doing, what this company is doing with this passenger railroad system, will be a game changer in terms of the economic opportunities that we bring back to the East Coast for the areas that we serve. And I think it's going to change the way a lot of people decide to travel. I think it's going to put people back in trains. It's going to get them out of their cars. Look, if you want to go fly to Orlando from Miami, that's going to cost you a lot of money. If you want to drive, it's going to take you 3.5 to 4 hours. We're going to be a little quicker, but we're going to do it more safely. We're going to take probably about 3 million cars off the road, we think, By the way, I didn't mention, we're creating about 45,000 construction jobs during this project. And when we finish, we'll have created about 8,000 permanent jobs. So we think this is going to be a huge economic impact to the state, not just where we stop, but wherever we go. I can't tell you how many people around the country, people in the transportation infrastructure business are watching us. They're very excited. We get calls, Richard, don't we, from all over the country. People, association states, what are you doing in Florida? Tell me about this train you're building, and how come you're not using public funds? We think we have a unique city pair that allows us to do it. And again, what makes us most unique is the existing corridor that we have. You can't replicate this everywhere, but you can do it in other places. And so we're excited that Florida is going to be, once again, at the forefront of railroad history, which helped build this state. And I'll be glad to answer any questions, and thank you very much. Then I got to get the railroad buff here with the FEC patch on his shirt. Ask the first question.
Okay.
Unless it's a difficult one, then you.
It may be a little bit difficult. You have addressed one recurring concern that I've heard over the past year since I brought this news back to the group, and that's which side of the track the additional track might be.
Mm-hmm.
It's unknown at this point.
Correct.
The other recurring concern that I've heard brought up several times at several meetings and at the board meetings is the concern about keeping people and wildlife
Safe.
safe and off of the track, and whether this corridor might be fenced. We represent 1,000 or 1,100 properties. We represent about 5% of the trackage of your proposed train. So we're population, we're not real big. At 5% of the line, I think we are fairly significant. I think I can safely say that the majority of our property owners are very concerned about personal safety and the safety of our wildlife. We have a state preserve and a county preserve.
Can you speak up?
I'll summarize this question.
Well, no, but there's a train going by, and I was like,
Yeah, I love it. I love it.
We have a state preserve, and we have a county preserve, and a nature preserve that stretches from Jensen Beach Boulevard to the Savannah's Road
Okay.
as our backyard.
Yeah.
We have a lot of wildlife back there. We're protective of it. We take personal ownership of it, if you will. And
Well, okay, I get the gist of your question, and if anybody wants me to repeat it, obviously, safety is the gist of his question, safety for people, safety for wildlife in the area. And I don't think I can emphasize enough that safety is going to be one of our most important concerns as we develop this system. And we're going to be spending a lot of energy, time, and money to make sure this whole corridor is safe. So there will be areas that we have to do, we have to put up fencing, and that's part of the reason why I told you will see teams of engineers and other people surveying the entire corridor to see what we need to do and where we need to do it. I can't tell you what exactly going to happen here, but I'm glad you brought up the wildlife part, because it's something I need to bring back to the company and say it's just not about people, but it's about the environment here. You all live in a very, very unique area, a very beautiful area, and I think we would be just as concerned about protecting it as you are. So that's something that we're going to be paying a lot of attention to. But yes, sir.
I saw in your table up there that you're doing an environmental impact statement. It sounds like you are putting the engineers out late this year, and you anticipate the environmental impact statement will be done in the spring. So have you assessed impacts to like federally protected species and come up with mitigation plans already?
Yes, that's
and done comment period requests and scoping meetings with all of the state agencies?
Yes, we've been involved in this environmental process, when did we start? Yeah, we did it in
You may want to point that Miami, West Palm is done.
two batches. I mentioned Miami to West Palm Beach. We have our permits. That was.
Yeah, that's an environmental assessment.
And the Federal Railroad Administration, the government said that they found no significant impact. You can imagine that area is all built out. We're in a corridor that's already disturbed. It's not the same as here. So we're doing a separate environmental impact process for here, all the way to Orlando. That has been underway for since January, maybe it started before. And that is, we have had scoping meetings. We did 5 scoping meetings. So what's a scoping meeting? So that's a meeting where we, in a big room like this, we have members of the company, boards, displays, information. You come, you study the system, you see what we're doing, you ask questions, you make comments. We've done the public comment period. We drafted, we have the FRA is, by the way, supervising this. It's not the EPA, it's the Federal Railroad Administration. We have had Federal Railroad Administration people down here studying the system. We are in the middle of the drafting of the environmental impact statement. We've discussed wildlife, eagle's nest, everything, going over bodies of water. We're dealing with the Coast Guard, the Army Corps of Engineers. That's in process. Once we get a draft environmental impact statement, that's the draft, big book. We will do another round of public input meetings, and we'll have one in every county that we're operating in. So we had one in Fort Pierce. We did that in May or June.
Just to point out, because this is an existing corridor, with a live train already, the environmental impacts are not as great because it's already existing.
True. You didn't hear him. He said because this is an existing corridor, something like the southern segment, but a little bit different here. It's because it's an existing corridor that has been in place for over 100 years. The environmental impacts are much different than you might say if you were building a brand new railroad, across the Everglades or off the center of the state. So much of it is considered disturbed, and so they're looking at other ancillary impacts that we might have. And so that's, yes, sir. Noise? Noise, well, a train is required by the FRA to sound their horn when they go across a crossing, just like you heard a few minutes ago. There's a specific pattern they have to do, 2 long, 1 short, 1 long. And that's why you always hear the same pattern. This train will have to do the same thing. Now, I will tell you that the tracks that we put in are going to be, I like train horns too. Where I live in Orlando, I hear them every night. The tracks will be welded, so there won't be having that clickety-clack that you hear. They'll all be welded together. It'll be much smoother and much quieter in that respect. The engines are much quieter because it's the brand new engines right off the factory floor, much different than these old freight engines we're running. Yes, ma'am.
I'm very new, I just moved here, I missed a lot of what's going on. My question may sound very ignorant, but are you saying that these tracks, this new train is going to be are separate, that the freight trains are going to be going by as they normally are, and these tracks are going to be put next to them, and this train will be going back there too?
Freight trains will continue on this track, and passenger trains will continue. They'll share the tracks. It's 2 tracks because passenger trains got to go, past each other. So it's 2 tracks. But freight trains sometimes will follow a passenger train, and it's all scheduled kind of like we have dispatch centers that schedule this. I call them air traffic controllers for trains. Yes, ma'am. Oh, and by the way, let me just tell you, if I may, the Northeast Corridor between New York and Washington, they have 391 trains a day going in those tracks, including so there's plenty, in terms of capacity, there's room to do that for the 18 freight trains we have running. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I don't live in this area, I live north in a historic area. There's less than 600 hours, but we have 6 crossings that we maintain for FEC. I have one coming up for $90,000. Are we going to have to continue to pay for all these crossings?
So we're going through and we're doing upgrades at every crossing, including the 6 that you're talking about.
Right.
And for folks who don't know, cities and counties have to share in the cost of maintaining crossings because the railroad came through first. The roads cross our tracks And when they do that, the agreements are made with the cities to help maintain them. So we would maintain tracks, the cities might maintain the asphalt. So every 8 or 10 years or 5 years, whatever it is, depending on how much damage to that corridor, the railroad goes through, fixes it, the city or county gets a bill for a portion of it. So we're going to do that in every crossing. We're going to be upgrading for safety. But we are not going to be passing any of those costs on to any of the cities or counties we're going through. We announced that about a month ago. We're not passing any of those costs on to anybody.
So the 6 crossings we have.
You will not get a bill for the work we're doing.
Once you begin, we will never have to pay for them.
Yes, no, that's not true. Once service begins, the agreements, the maintenance agreements that the cities and counties have with the railroads will remain in place. So in the out years, as repairs have to be made, again, the cities and counties will share in the cost of that. But this initial cost, which will be rather high, will be borne by the railroad as we're going through.
Well, that's our concern, because there's only 600 of us. We've got the oldest house in Sandusky County, all the way north. So we were there before the railroad train came through. And that's our concern. We're a small community.
And what's your community?
Sandusky Village.
Well, we're going to be there on Thursday? Tuesday next week. And we're going to be making the announcement to the officials there that we're not going to be charging them. But ma'am, every railroad in the country has the same type of agreements. It's standard all over the country, and we are taking a step to keep those costs as we go through initially under our portfolio. But in the out years, those agreements will remain in place. Yes, sir. Yes.
My question is that we're going to be impacted by your project. And since you removed Fort Pierce as one of your stopping points, what's the benefit to us?
So, I was waiting for that question. So, as I mentioned, this is a private business enterprise. And so to make this a successful business operation, they've identified the cities, as I've showed you, where most of the ridership will come from. We're going to be running hourly service to those cities. It's our intention to build the system the way I've just showed you, to get it up and running and to make it successful. Assuming it is successful, at that point, we will be in a position to say, okay, now what else can we do? So if we wanted to stop at Fort Pierce, that would be something we might want to consider. We'd have to study it. We'd study the ridership, study what kind of service we would want to provide, whether it's Fort Pierce, Stewart, Vero Beach, Cocoa, anywhere along the line. We would have to study, see what the best place to put a station is, and see what kind of service we would want to provide. It would not be hourly service. It might be 2 or 3 times a day. We just don't know. But it's important that we build this base system we call the trunk first, which is where the most successful operations will be before we can consider other stops. So we're not saying we will never stop in another city. We're just saying we're building this system the way it is right now, and then we'll if we're not successful, then no one's going to get a station. So we want to get this in first before we can talk about other stations. Yes, ma'am, right here.
I have 2 questions. The first is, which side of the 3 tracks will the access road be on? East or west?
Access road.
That's being used right now for the Savannah's Preserve State Park.
I do not know.
I think it's $3,000 a year they pay to use it.
Oh, I see.
And it used to be where our original track was. You don't know which side the access road will be on.
No, good question, but I'm going to look that up.
And my other question is, are you a subsidiary of Florida East Coast Railway?
So,
Are they a
good question, I meant to say that.
subsidiary of you, or are you partners?
Florida East Coast Railway is part of our family of companies. It is a sister company of ours, so I showed you that chart in the beginning, Florida East Coast Industries and the 4 companies, but you didn't see Florida East Coast Railway. Well, we are all owned by the same company called Fortress, and so Florida East Coast Railway is a
So
sister
what has
company.
been sold?
What has been sold?
Florida East
The
Coast
company,
Railway.
the Florida East Coast Railway, which was under Florida East Coast Industries, was bought in 2007 by a company called Fortress. And this is the company that is investing the money to put this passenger rail system back on the line.
Thank you.
Yes, sir?
Up and down the railway here, there are a number of people that own property on both sides of the railroad. And the railroad establish their property And Florida law provides access to those properties if they address that in their planning for the
Say, what did you say? What did you say, federal law? What did you say?
state law.
State law?
Provides access to those separate properties. If they're not along roadways and things like that, they address that in their plan for their new system.
Well, so I'm aware that there are some properties that claim ownership on both sides of the tracks. I believe you have access if you go to down the street to where the crossing is. You go back to your land. Going across our track.
They offered to arrest you, is what they did.
Yes, sir.
And I challenge that. But that's what I'm saying. Are you addressing that? Will there be a road access to get to our property?
Well, that would involve a cost, and I'm not sure who might pay for that. But right now, crossing the tracks is trespassing, and so.
It all depends on what chapter of the Florida law you read.
Okay. Well, that's a good one, and you know, I'm sure I have a feeling we have very smart lawyers that are looking at all of that.
They haven't arrested me yet. When I give them a copy of the Florida statute, they go home and they don't call me again.
Okay. Who has not asked a question? Yes, sir.
My question is noise again. My house is particularly close to your rail line, and your track is elevated quite a bit higher than the houses in our area. When I bought that property, I considered putting in some sort of sound barrier, but it would have to be quite high because the train and the engine obviously is quite a bit above my house. Have you guys considered putting in any sound mitigation barriers where the properties where people reside?
On the old track though?
Well, we're going to be upgrading. We're not going to be laying just new track. We'll be upgrading the existing track.
What do you think the fare will be required to go there?
Well, we're looking at that. We haven't decided what a fare will be.
There must be some assumption made, so.
Yeah, well, I leave that to the operations folks, but, you know, since we're almost 2 years away or a year and a half away from service, I think they're really concerned about getting the service up and running. So I'll answer your question this way. We have to be competitive to be successful. Okay, so if you're in Miami and you want to fly from Miami to Orlando, you're going to get a certain airfare depending on if you bought the ticket to leave tomorrow or you bought the ticket to leave 3 weeks from now. It's going to be a different price. You're going to pay a different price depending on the time of day you leave. If you want to leave during rush hour or during a time or a day of the week, which you can get a better fare. If you drive from Miami to Orlando, the IRS reimbursement rate is 55 cents a mile. I don't know what that comes to at 240 miles, but that's $75 to $100 worth of gas plus insurance for wear and tear in your car. So we have to look at what it costs people to go by other modes of travel and say, okay, we want to make it worth your while to be on our train. Yes, sir.
Sorry, we still have a noise concern. Right now, a lot of the trains that go across Walton Road don't blow whistles, don't have horns, they just do the lights. And that's fine with us. I think if you can't see the light, whether you're deaf, dumb, or blind, you've got a problem. But the noise, blowing a horn every hour.
Yeah, 32 a day, you say?
Every hour.
But not overnight, though, not like the freight trains in the evening, so it just didn't. Well, there's a process called quiet zones. It's a Federal Railroad Administration program that cities and counties who want to silence the horns at a certain crossing can do so. There's have to be certain upgrades to the crossing to make it safer, to make sure that it is impossible to beat the train. Officer, I'm sure you've seen it, where people are waiting at the gate crossing, but they don't want to wait for the train, they're going to try and go around. And that's a very dangerous thing to do. So to have your intersection, your crossing, be designated a quiet zone, which means what they call an engineer does not have to sound his horn. You have to secure that crossing. Right now, if you have 2 gates like this, and for a quiet zone crossing, you might have 4 gates. You might have like a Jersey barrier down the yellow line that keeps cars from trying to go against traffic and get around. If the Federal Railroad Administration likes what you've done, then we tell the train not to sound the horn there. And that can be done in railroad crossing that you have. That's a city and county application, and they've done it. They've done it for the Tri-Rail down in South Florida to south of those ones. And that's something I would be talking to the county. I'm assuming we're in county land right here, so we would want to talk to the county and ask them about designating some of those as quiet zones and putting in an application to the Federal Railroad, to the government.
The railroad won't be responsible for it, it has to come from county.
It's considered a quality of life issue, and the law, the way the law is written, the city or county has to apply. And whatever upgrades that are put in that crossing that's the cost to the city, to the applicant.
All of it like for the wildlife as well, right enough because you don't have the trains, we know the trains are very far here. But the noise issue, the car's horn, another signal device, I think it's not necessary. If we can go ahead and get the crossings at least.
Well, I encourage you to talk to the county folks about doing that, because they are discussing it in other areas. The county's looking at all of them. Yes, sir, in the back.
Yeah, I'll go back to his question over there against the other wall, and you answered it with a lawyer, and...
I'm not even a lawyer.
No, I know, but you answered it with using lawyers.
Oh, yeah.
And you said you were here to help and listen and take things back. Many of us do own property on the other side of the tracks.
Yes, sir.
And so the answer to another fellow's question was, we need fences. There's his question.
Yes.
We need fences. Well, we also need a right-of-way by the state law. That's where you brought in the lawyers. So if we still want to access our property on the other side of the tracks, we need to have that road and we need to have a gate. I mean, it's when Henry Flagler came here, he was not intending to block off the whole state. No, he was not going to. He had steam engines.
Yeah.
But you like to bring him up. So let's keep him there. If we want to get to use our property, I would like to take this back to your group. Help us out. Have a gate. If you're going to put up fencing, we should be able to access our property.
I don't understand the access road. Is that within the 100-foot corridor?
Yes.
What's that?
I don't understand the access road. Is it within the FEC corridor?
Yes.
The access road?
Yes.
You have to provide
On the west side, you track.
over the track.
It's within that corridor right now?
But I think it's only a certain section, like midway down to
That's very
something
important
like
to us.
that.
That's
I'll take that back.
We're hearing this for the first time ever, that there's an access road inside the corridor. Is that by contract, or how is that? It's by contract? Well, then everything should be okay. Okay, yeah.
And,
Yeah, well, that would remain.
Well, we'd like to get
Well, that's where the new track has to go.
Before you leave.
There's not enough room on that side.
We'll take that back.
That's
Yeah.
very
All I can
interesting.
tell you is we're going to...
Sure.
I
Your
spent
concerns will be
several
right.
clear pepper trees on the other side of the tracks.
Uh-huh.
And it's a beautiful piece of property that we own, they own, and they own, and we'd like to be able to use it. If it takes using that access road that y'all are bound by law, yeah, we'd like to go down the access road, and we'd also like to have a gate if you're going to put a fence up.
I'll take that back.
And not be threatened with arrest every time they find it out.
Yes, sir, I don't think you got a question.
Last I heard, the population of Fort St. Lucie and Fort Pierce metro area exceeds West Palm Beach. I'm puzzled that you don't have a stop scheduled here. Secondly, what you're talking about doing is increasing 2 to 3 times the number of times that the gate's going to go down on the crossings on Walton, Midway, all the way across St. Lucie County, up and down. And there's no benefit to us. There's no benefit to us. You folks are not doing this for altruistic reasons. You're doing it to make money. They go from Mickey World to mine. So I think you're missing the bet on us here.
Well, in answering your question, the same answer to this question is something we're going to want to look at. And I'm sure we will be. But what was the first part of the question? When we cross an intersection, when we cross a road, it's not going to be the same as a freight train. It's going to be a cycling that's less than a minute. That gate's going to go down, train's going by, going up. It's going to be pretty quick. So it's not, in terms of blocking traffic, not anywhere near like a freight train right now. Much shorter. Yes, ma'am.
What is the projected timeframe for construction, like just for the Trader Coast?
The construction up here won't happen until later in 2014.
But are they saying it's going to take a year, 2 years, or?
I really don't know. So the best way to answer that is our goal is to have start operating the train with customers by the end of 2015 or very early 2016. So construction somewhere starting in 2014 and finishing at some point a year later, I would think so. Yes, sir?
I got a question, and I heard this, and then maybe you can put it correct, but you said it was how many $1 billion project?
1.5.
1.5. And I've also heard that there's another $500 million also earmarked, and some of that might be public money. Is that true?
There's a federal loan program that the railroad has applied for, but these figures I'm throwing out that's included in that figure.
But it's a loan, not a grant.
It's a loan. That's good specifically for railroads. Yes, sir.
My question is dealing with the questions too back about crossings, and I did the math too, and I know we're going from 1 train an hour to 3 trains an hour, so that's basically 1 every 20 minutes. And the 14-mile stretch that people live along here, they do have to cross that train track to get to the hospital. Is there any discussion on some kind of alternative crossing, either up or under, so that you're not always stopped in an emergency situation?
Can't be under, yeah.
Because there are no fire trucks on this side of the tracks. They all have to cross too.
Well, I mean, as far as I know, again, engineers will be going up, down, and looking at what they have to do. As far as I know, no bridges are planned at this point. If the city, if the city or county wants to build a bridge over the railroad, they're welcome to do that. But that's something that the city. Yeah, we would have to give them the air rights. I mean, they're welcome to commensurate with the air rights. Yes, ma'am.
Historically, we've never had access to land on the other side of the track unless there was a crossing there like Eaglong Plantation had years ago, which Florida East Coast closed once, but since it already had been there, they had to open it up. The rest of us can only legally reach the other side by water. Like you go to Walton Road and take a canoe or a kayak to the land on the other side.
Well, you know, I'm well aware of that issue, and that's something that I know the company's aware of, and that's one of the reasons why we're here, so we can hear what you have to say about it. I don't have any answers to that, but it's something they're going to try and mitigate. Okay, are we, oh, yes, sir? Ma'am?
Are you going to run the trains regardless of how many people are on the train? So you run it every hour, and if there's only 3 people riding it, you're going to still run it every hour?
I suppose yes, but because if it's scheduled service and the train has to be in another location at a certain time, what do you do? I mean, you leave Miami, if it's not full, maybe it might get full when it leaves West Palm. So I suppose the answer is yes. Yes, sir.
Can I just get clarification? You said that you're upgrading tracks. Is any of the existing track going to remain, or is it all going to be new?
I think some track will remain. They assess the condition of the track. A lot of it will be new. Chuck?
If there are cost overruns on your project, how will you address the business model at $100 each way? And, you know, you're basing the purchase price of the ticket one way on the assumption that it's going to be X number of dollars. Will all of a sudden the purchase price go up from $100 to $150 or $200? And if that's the case, all of a sudden your business model doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
Sure, do the best they can. Trying to make profit.
Has that been talked about, Rusty? I mean, is that something that?
I'm sure. I suppose it has been. Not in the meetings I've been in.
Right.
This is this is not something they just sat around the table and said, let's do this. It's been studied quite heavily. I'm sure they're looking at scenarios. Pricing structure is being discussed. No decisions have been made. Yes, ma'am.
Marilyn Minardi. Rusty, I have two questions. The first one on behalf of our neighbors to the south. How are you going to put two tracks across the Roosevelt Bridge? Right now you have one single track with the drawbridge. And now you're talking about increasing that traffic. How are you going to get a second track across? And without building a high bridge, how are you going to address the boat traffic?
So
It's already hurts like crazy down there.
we've actually, and you participated in some of those meetings, Richard, we've had a lot of meetings with the boating community, with the city officials in the area. We are not going to build a second track. We're going to use that bridge that is right now. It's going to be, the scheduling will have to be timed, obviously, so that one train goes across. That's the area where we have to slow down, is that not correct? So we're going pretty slow there.
Very slow through Stewart.
Oh, yes. And so, and the bridge is going to be worked on to make it more efficient, obviously upgraded as the best we can to make it more efficient, faster. And again, we're working with the boating community there. Same thing in Fort Lauderdale with the boating community.
Working group has been set up just to address that.
And Richard reminds me, there's a working group in that area to address that issue.
The first time I heard of you, it was a $1 billion program. You were going to fund it yourself. The second time, and if I recall correctly, a couple months ago, the news reported this was a $2.4 billion program with $1 billion of your investment. And tonight, it's a $1.5 billion program. So I guess the real question is, I'd like to ask about your financing model. How much money is FEC putting up their own cold, hard cash into this project compared to what are they financing? And for what they're financing, how much am I co-signing for, me meaning the taxpayer?
You're not co-signing for anything.
Okay, what's the federal loan program?
The federal loan program is a loan program. It's not costing taxpayers any money because it's being paid back. Now, the $1 million you must have, somebody misprinted, misheard, that's kind of a ridiculous figure. And could there be cost overruns? I'm sure, but that's the stated budget, and that's the only figure that
equity is FEC putting into the project?
a significant amount.
20, 40, 60?
None yet.
They're financing it. They're financing it with some of their own cash. They're in the investment community to get investors. I can't give you specifics. I'm not privy to that. It's not. I won't tell you. I don't know. I'm not in the room.
That's fine. And the federal loan program, it's not federally guaranteed. It's only federally.
No, it's not a gift. It's not a federally guaranteed program. We have to pledge collateral. And it costs money. Yeah. We pay interest on the loan. After 9/11, there was a federal loan program for the airline industry because of the way they were affected, and it's called the Airline Stabilization Fund. All the airlines were really hurting, and they borrowed money from the federal government, and everyone paid them back.
Well, having lived next to FEC for 30-some years, and having railroad people from other parts of the country in my family, I'm proud to live next to the only railroad I can see that actually makes money these days, and I would be concerned if it got in over its head to the federal government and the federal government ended up making another Conrail out of you. I would be concerned about that.
Yeah, I would too. I don't think so.
Thank you.
All right, I think we have time for one more. Ma'am, you've been putting your hand up.
How are those three tracks going to turn into one just to go over the Roosevelt Bridge?
Scheduling. You merge and you go. Three tracks, I don't know where the three tracks are, but
You have one going north and one going south
Right.
for passengers, and you have the freight track. So there are three
no,
tracks that all
the
converge.
freight shares the same two tracks with the passenger. It's not a separate freight track.
There are not going to be three tracks?
No, just two. There are certain areas in the corridor, like in any railroad, where you have some extra sidings, an extra track where trains wait, rail yards, that kind of thing. I don't know where we're going to do that, where we have that
So it
now.
won't all be welded track. Some of them will be remaining as Florida's Coast has their freight track.
No, it'll all be welded. It'll all be welded. But freight can run on welded track. It's just never been done here.
Yes, it is.
It's welded here?
That's 100% welded
All right,
rail on
so it's welded
concrete.
now, it's welded track now. Chuck, are we done? Thank you very much, I appreciate it.
Thank you very much. I'll do it.